Good morning, everyone. My name is Nolan Pleche. I am one of the lobbyists with the League of Oregon Cities. Welcome to this morning's breakout session, The Use of Artificial Intelligence in Government, Navigating Challenges and Embracing Opportunities. I would like to introduce you all to our speakers today. Rafael Wessif, who's faculty from Portland State University. Rick Stevens, an AI instructor at the University of Oregon. Hector Dominguez from Smart Cities PDX and the City of Portland, and Quang Trong, who's co-founder and CEO of Urban Form. So please join me in welcoming all our speakers here today. And with that, since we do only have an hour, we'll go ahead and kick this off. And Rafael, if you want to get us started.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Rafael Wessif, and the voice is okay, right? Awesome, it's kind of like reverberating, like what's happening. So I'm a professor at the Hatfield School of Government in Portland State University, and I'm doing a lot of work at the intersection of AI and government. And so what we are kind of working on is trying to figure out what are the best ways we can figure out to help local governments into navigating this AI space and what we can do at the research front. So start with my presentation, possibilities and challenges. So I'll be talking a lot about what the possibilities are for AI, what the governments can do, how can it help, but also some of those challenges. And the third part, I'll be talking about how to navigate those challenges too, because it's an exciting thing, but also there are some challenges that we need to work on while working on these. So what is AI? And everybody defines differently. We just had a pretty long conversation on what AI is. And people disagree, agree. I'll just give a very simple definition just to start the conversation. It's a machine's ability or a computer's ability to perform cognitive functions we usually associate with humans. So making a choice about traffic signal, kind of like red, blue, making a social security decision, making other kinds of decisions that people can make. Very simple decision that we normally associate with humans. Those are some of the things that the computers are able to do right now, and that's what I would just be calling AI. The other part that I'll quickly say is, even though we say that AI, talking about ChatGPT, all of that stuff, AI has been everywhere for a long time. So every time you're using Google Translator, and you say, how are you? And it comes from Spanish, like, ¿cómo estás? And then my Spanish is not great, so you're using AI already. So when we're talking about AI, we just kind of realize that it's already a big part of our lives right now, even though we're not thinking about it. Every time you're using Google search, and I assume some of you may be doing that right now and not listening to me, of course, that's also AI every day that you're using. Facebook algorithm, what you see every day on social media, it's actually being decided by AI. So every time you see some post that you agree with, disagree with, it's not something showing up randomly. It's actually being decided by an AI system. So it's already pretty much everywhere in terms of how we're interacting with lives every day. I'll talk quickly about two different kinds of AI and just kind of make some differences about how they are different, how they're similar. There are two different types of AI generally. One is called a predictive AI, and one is called a generative AI. So I'll be focusing more on these kind of AIs. Predictive AIs. So predictive AIs are basically that look at some prior data, some kind of already existing data, and they look at something new and kind of predict if it's something or not. So one of the great examples of predictive AI is spam mail. As you, most of us get spam mails. As you, most of us are not happy about spam mail. But most of the time, you may have noticed that, at least for Gmail or Yahoo or whatever we are using, it's very good at deciding if something is a spam or not. I'm a professor, so I'm very unhappy sometimes. A lot of the Gmails of my students think that it's spam, actually, which doesn't make me too happy about it. But generally, it's been working pretty well. And it's a very simple example of a predictive AI. Based on prior emails, it just kind of predicts if something is a spam or not. And this is what is called predictive AI. One of the problems that I'll talk a little more about in terms of predictive AI is biased AI, the problem of biases in AI. So AI is biased when it produces outputs that reinforce and perpetuate stereotypes that harm specific groups. AI is fair when it makes predictions or output that don't discriminate, but it's biased when it's making some of those predictions that are discriminatory. However, why are some AI algorithms biased? I would argue that AI systems are biased because society is biased. Since society is biased, much of the data AI is trained on contains societal biases. So the stuff that you're training the AI on is actually based on some of the stuff that the society is already kind of thinking about. So it learns those biases and produces results that uphold them. For example, if you ask some AI bot to generate a picture of a successful CEO of a company, it's going to produce an image of a white male. Because that's how people sometimes think about what CEOs should be like. So the reason some of these AI are biased is because the data that we are using them to train them are actually biased. And to kind of make them less biased, we need to find data that is actually less biased. Some examples of biased AI is mortgage rates. So mortgage approval rates, if you use some AI system, have found to be 40 to 80% more likely to deny borrowers of color. Because the data that is being trained on is already doing some of those things. The historical data that it's being trained on is actually based on some of the decisions that humans have already made, right? And the problem with that is because of these kind of biases that people have, that's what AI is being trained on. Another great example is recruitment in AI. So some people, some companies, some local governments can also use some of these AI tools for recruitment of people, or at least like shortlisting application, right? But some of the tools that have been used historically have shown to be discriminatory towards women. And Amazon is a great example. So their algorithm was found to be discriminatory. But going back to the focus is, it's not that the algorithm is biased itself. The data that it is using, the history that it's using is discriminatory. And so when we are using some of these tools, we have to be very careful about what the data is kind of coming from. Another great example of some kind of biased AI is AI chatbots. We use a lot of these chatbots every day, but do we really know how accessible are they towards people of color, or people who have different accents, or people who have different languages? And that showed that some of these access issues are based because of some of these things. Another thing that I'll quickly talk about is something called woke AI. So, like there's a lot of political and partisan divides on so many different things. But who is training these AI? And what are their political beliefs? And could that also affect the outcomes of the AI? And there's more and more conversations happening, and I'll be talking more about it a little later too, of big tech's AI jeopardizes biases, all of that kind of stuff. So that's also another biases that could actually be showing in some of these AI tools too in the future. Political biases. The other part that I'll quickly talk, and I just want to say in terms of time. So we talked a little about predictive AI, the AI that could predict outcomes based on certain things like spam, not spam. The other AI that a lot of people are talking about these days is generative AI. So generative AI is basically that it's actually generating new products or new kind of stuff from that did not exist before. So a new picture of a person. So if you look at this picture, that is actually being not based on a real person. That's actually generated by AI. And this is another kind of AI that is really kind of pushing our boundaries of what could be generated or not could be generated. Why did it become so much more? I think a lot of people have talked about ChatGPT. And so ChatGPT is an example of generative AI because it's generating new text based on other things. And that's why a lot of people are talking more about like ChatGPT and generative AI. Some things that generative AI or ChatGPT can be helpful in local governments, people are talking a little about is content generation. You have to generate content every day. You have to produce documents. You have to produce reports. Those could be really helpful with some of these ChatGPT. Customer service, public engagement, policy analysis, all of these kind of things are possibilities. that ChatGPT can help in some possibilities. However, at the same time, there are also some concerns about ChatGPT. One of the biggest concerns is privacy. If you're putting stuff in ChatGPT, it's also getting trained on private data. So if you have government private data, it is possible that the ChatGPT will actually also have information that is private. So there's a big problem there in terms of like privacy and what people are doing. Another problem, and I think quickly talked about, are biases. A really big problem could be about biases, right? So a great example is asking ChatGPT about its opinion about undocumented migrants, or asking ChatGPT about its opinion on abortion, or asking ChatGPT about its opinion on a lot of the other options, right? It does have an opinion. If you notice that, like even talk about it, it does have an opinion. So when you're starting to develop policy documents based on some of those opinions, what is those biases going to be like in the future? And that could be a problem for a lot of people, especially in the government, right? Fake response is another problem with ChatGPT and generative AI. Like it seems that it is correct, but some of the time it's just basically making stuff on its own. So people have to be careful about some of those things too. Another problem could be that people are just using generative AI too much. But then like the reason policy is beautiful is because everybody brings their own human interpretive experiences, right? But once you start writing policy based on ChatGPT, that's just one algorithm deciding policy, right? And that could be another problem with some of these algorithms. I'll just kind of summarize quickly because I think I'm already kind of going over time. So benefits, there are several benefits for local governments in terms of AI. It could enhance a lot of aspects of local government and reduce both the time and cost of government. Could be cheap to do some of those things, could also reduce a lot of the time. It can also enhance citizens' experiences working with the government. Think of like a ChatGPT-powered chatbot that could actually answer you much more specific questions that citizens may have. Help smaller governments catch up with large governments. Maybe with these tools, you can actually help with some grant writing that is such a long process. However, there are a lot of cost or potential risks that people need to think about. It could be biased. It has data and privacy issues. May reduce use of critical thinking if you start over-relying on ChatGPT and stuff like that. And it still cannot replace human interaction with citizens. So I'll stop here with this code. AI cannot replace humans, but if used properly, it can enhance many government functions. But to make it work, it needs constant oversight, audit, evaluation, analysis. This is a quote from somebody who's very wise, and that's me. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Wait a second for the slides to come up. Oh, they're just in sequence. Perfect. So tell me if you recognize this voice.
The use of artificial intelligence in government, navigating challenges and embracing opportunities.
James Earl Jones, right? But this is synthetic. This is generated from AI. It needs a very small amount of training data. In fact, with 2 sentences or so, we could synthesize any of your voices. And this gets partly to the issue Rafael talked about, personal identity and personal privacy and so on. And it's a very narrow type of AI. I mean, it's very focused on what it does. Voice synthesis has lots of applications and a lot of concerns. We're moving rapidly, though, towards more general AI, which is something Kwang's going to talk about a little bit later. And more general AI is combining all of these different narrow forms like text to voice, text to imagery, video to voice. I mean, this whole spectrum of generative AI. But general AI is moving towards more like a comprehensive way of machine thinking, emulating neural networks of humans. So pretty wild stuff. It's part of the era we're in right now of digitalization. And for cities, it's imperative to become more digitally literate, to have more access to AI, and have more proficiency in using AI. Another voice.
General artificial intelligence is inevitable.
Oh, Morgan Freeman. But it's synthesized very easily. It's a free program. And I have a whole list of these generative AI programs, the link. I'm not going to read any of my slides. There's a lot of text, but I hope you will want to download the PowerPoint presentation because I've got links to generative AI programs, links to policy documents, a variety of things for your reference. There are hundreds of city AI applications, and as Rafael said, it's embedded in everything. If you send an email and it's got autocomplete or autocorrect, that's a kind of a predictive AI called a Markov chain, and it's just embedded in everything. But I think one of the things you're probably interested in addition to all these applications, and you can read these at your leisure at some other time, is, this particular one I really love. You're going to learn more about this type of city planning capability with AI from Kwong in a little bit. I stole one of your pictures, Kwong. So for your city to start using AI, you're going to want to have some guidelines or policies or standard operating procedures, both for your staff to use, for city administration, even for your public officials, and also to share with the public, because for transparency, accountability, participatory requirements, and efficiency, you're going to need some kind of a policy document. So these are the major policy elements that we recommend. I don't believe any city in Oregon yet has a policy document for AI, especially generative AI. But there are 3 great case studies for you to emulate if you're interested in this: Boston, San Jose, and Seattle. They're model policy documents, they're model guidelines for how cities can use and document using AI. And our class, I teach at the University of Oregon, has been working with the city of Salem, very progressive and innovative in their early adoption of AI, to develop a model generative AI policy. That model is going to be based on these components. Again, we don't have the time to read them, but I hope you'll want to download the PowerPoint based on these components, and that's available on a link that I'll share with you later. For types of narrow generative AI, we have a really wide spectrum of things that you can do with AI. I think ChatGPT gets all the publicity pretty much, but there are amazing things. You can just implement text to video by a few sentences and then continue to iterate it to create amazing videos, or automate email systems. You'll be surprised to know that many of your elected and appointed officials don't read the entire staff reports. Yeah, there's a, sort of surprise. I was a planning commissioner for like 20 years for different cities, and sometimes I would get a box of materials before the next public hearing. And I know traffic counts are exciting, and I know the details of hydraulic systems is really late night reading. I did not read those. So one of the cool things you can do with AI is you can summarize documents. You can translate documents. You can have documents formatted for different kinds of presentations and materials, different kinds of presentations and applications. There are some amazing, simple things you can do with generative AI that are very inexpensive, beyond that list of high-tech predictive AI applications. Your citizens have anxiety about AI, and I'm so immersed in studying it that I often forget the issues that you heard from Rafael. Hector's going to talk about them in more detail, and Kwong will probably mention some of them. A lot of citizens have concerns about biases, a lot of concerns about the data, how the data is used for decision making. And so I would recommend, in addition to having a city policy, that you also have some kind of a public information component to your city, where you have online how the city is using AI, perhaps have a public event, coordinate with local schools, something to help with that. So the city of Salem, with our group, is going to do a library event next month, AI Lab, and next week, Portland Community College is holding an AI symposium in Portland. So these kinds of events really help dispel a lot of the rumors and a lot of the negativity On the downside, it might even generate some of those problems, but at least it's working to the right direction to allow your cities to explore and be more innovative with using AI. If you have a public that's more acceptant and more willing to see AI used for your city operations. These are the resources I mentioned. These are hot links, so when you download the PowerPoint, you'll get hot links to over 200 generative AI programs, spanning that whole spectrum of uses from voice synthesis to everything to video to everything. I mean, it's amazing. There's 200, and it's increasing all the time. Our students are adding more all the time. An AI glossary. I wish we could have more time for all of us to discuss some of the real interesting concepts about developing AI. We're talking about the fifth industrial revolution and transhumanism and the technological singularity. There's some wild things coming up within our lifetime. There's a work in progress report that has the model generative AI policy for cities, if you're interested in that. An AI timeline that also includes pop culture. So things like, we were talking about movies like Lucy, if you know that one with Scarlett Johansson, has an AI component there related to this technological singularity and transhumanism, these other thoughts. Smart Cities is an article about the infusion of AI into cities, and this has been going on for a long time. It dates back at least to 2005 with IBM and Cisco. This is how I got first involved in it. And lastly, if you have things that maybe I can help you with, or my class or other colleagues, my email connection there as well. I'm going to end with a little brief clip from AI-generated music. This is generated by text. You just write in the type of music, trance, synthetic music, the beat style, the instruments, and so on. And that's not bad. There's a little more lively one coming up here. So anyway, I thank you very much for your time, and thanks so much to LOC for including me on this panel. It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Sorry for that. My name is Hector Dominguez, and I work for the City of Portland. I'm coordinating the work on open data, privacy, surveillance technologies, and relatively recently, AI. I'm part of the Smart Cities program there. And our program is actually hosted at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. We are not part of the IT services. First, before starting, which actually might have made the mistake of putting too many slides, which I'm going to go through quickly. But I want to understand my audience, and I want to see who here works for local government. If you can, all right, most of the people. Who works for the state? Okay, more or less, all right. Who's actually joining from the vendor side, from a company who wants to pitch? Okay, it's mostly local government. Okay, I feel like this is my crowd, and I'm going to share my suffering with you. Perfect. So one thing to know about me, working for the government is really my first job working for the government. I'm an engineer by career. I work for industry, sensors, machines, automation, and all that. I work for academic institutions, nonprofits. I had my startup when I first came here to Oregon doing sensor networks for vineyards. So joining the government for me was definitely a new experience. Joining the Smart Cities program, which the idea for that program for the City of Portland was to start dealing with emerging technology, right? And we are a pretty interdisciplinary team. We have a planner, we have somebody who is expert in public health, for instance, myself, who is an engineer. We work with city attorneys, with the Office of Equity and Human Rights. We work with IT services, with cybersecurity, so it's quite interdisciplinary. So government is evolving. That's something that I want to highlight with this presentation. So government needs to evolve as well, just as much as technology is evolving. And getting all these different talents together is a challenge, right? We have to offer enough incentives, and I think in our case has been, well, we contribute to our community in a very direct way, right? So personally, that's why I'm doing all this, because I know that everything that we do is going to benefit my neighborhood, my family, my community, and overall the whole city. So when we start looking into technology, we think about what does that mean. So framing that effort and trying to communicate that, in this case, using this public interest technology in general. So trying to make the better good of everything, and what does that mean? So it has to be effective, people-centered, fiscally responsible, evidence-based, which means data, democratic. There needs to have a component of public involvement, has to be transparent and accountable, right? The private sector, when they sell us things, sometimes some of these components are not present. Sometimes they're not transparent. We cannot explain, for instance, with AI, we cannot explain how that works. We need to work with them to get to that level as well. If the system fails, so who pays for that, right? If it creates some damages, what's the legal framework that we can actually deal with that? So those are the challenges that we are looking into that. So we started reaching out to our bureaus, right? So what did you concern when you are looking into AI? And we started getting some personal experiences. So, well, the first thing is that interacting with AI tools, right? So, for instance, there was this housing meeting, and then suddenly in the Zoom meeting, somebody from the audience had an automatic transcript system there, right? Other AI in this case. So, and then suddenly everything that was spoken there was automatically captured, right? It was with the community, and sensitive information was placed there, and then that meeting had to be canceled. So our colleagues, they were asking us, what do we do in that case, right? Another case is, for instance, when somebody is applying for a job, and they are using generative AI to put together a letter, right? So whoever is in charge of hiring that person, so they ask us, is that cheating? Is that legal? What are we going to do? So yeah, we need to provide all this guidance and in general. So in public records, information security, somebody in our staff is actually typing in ChatGPT, for instance, a question. So ChatGPT is going to give an answer. What does that mean for public records? What does that mean for cybersecurity? Is that person sharing information that shouldn't be shared? So those are the type of guidance that we jumped in and tried to answer right away internally. So we have a framework around, we look into AI as a general automated decision systems. So there are definitions, and these definitions, we have been working on that for a long time. Since our privacy policy passed, for instance, we started naming that in 2018. The federal government also has work ongoing, so we look into what the federal government is doing, all these different concerns of AI, anyways. So other cities, Rick mentioned Boston, San Jose, we are looking into Seattle, Washington State. New York City has a really old AI strategy that it looks into so many different things. Outside the US, Amsterdam, Barcelona, of course, the European Union, they have really strong frameworks, and it's a whole set of laws that is not only AI, it includes privacy, it includes digital services, it includes transferring an economic, in general economic benefits, cybersecurity, national security for their states and all that. So it's quite complex. The Federal Trade Commission also is in charge of regulating how companies actually use and offer services in general, and that includes AI. And then the Congress, also the US Congress had a generative AI guideline. So what are we doing here in Portland? So we really, the first thing that we did was provide a basic guideline to our city staff, basically centering three things. If you're going to use generative AI, first fact check your output, so what the system is telling you, review the content, especially if you have public communications or you are making a decision out of that. So fact check. The second one is disclose that you are using AI to everybody. And then do not share sensitive information or private information in the prompt. Lately, actually, we added a new one, which is around IP, right? Use an account owned by the city. Don't use your own account. So yeah, there is the landscape around AI, so generative AI, automatic transcription systems, AI assistants. So those are kind of the products that we are looking into. We put together a broad plan around how we are going to deal with AI. We are going to be focusing mostly on not overall policy, but rather really fine guidelines, administrative rules. So that's the way that we are finding more effective just to deal with this. In addition, so we have foundational policies around privacy, around cybersecurity, around data loss prevention, for instance, that we are there like focusing, and of course AI, HR, like human resources rules that actually are guiding how city staff is using technology in general. So we are just making sure that people understand those rules first. Rick mentioned that, so San Jose has some guidelines. I'm just going to go fast. So Boston, some interim guidelines. They focus on principles, for instance. New York City, the AI strategy. The European Union, for instance, they separate, so they identify what are the unacceptable risks for applications or for solutions. For instance, social scoring, biometric information, they are unacceptable. And the proposed AI Act in the European Union actually forbids the use. And they focus on the high-risk AI. So that's where they're actually looking into. Low risk is not so much. So in our roadmap, we are focusing on, trying to find best practices and help our agencies to identify biases, to be able to explain the results of the AI and if they are using it for decision making, and focus on privacy. So our program is actually helping already bureaus with privacy impact assessments, and if you're interested, I'll be happy to chat about that. So we are developing privacy impact assessments, and we help bureaus to identify all that and deal with, and it's quite complex, has to do with laws, public records, and et cetera. So assuming what is the value-based approach that we are using. So what are our values, basically? The City of Portland has a set of values. Use those for using technology in general, right? What does that mean an anti-racist technology? What does it mean that it has to be transparent? Communicate what you're doing, collaborate with others, et cetera, right? So doing no harm, be honest, use comprehensive communications, and use true claims. That's kind of foundational for us. The procedural approach, so at the end, we want to build bureaucracy. And specifically, so transparency, accountability, build due diligence process around that, monitor what you're doing. But particularly, we focus on the procedures on procurement. So we are working with our procurement team to see how we are going to procure AI solutions in general. For that, so start with the standards. We are internal communications ongoing with different bureaus, going one-to-one and helping them to understand all that. There are different spaces where we can actually intervene. Our IT services actually are great partners on that. Identify the right teams for the right purpose. So we have technical teams helping us to, for instance, if we are using cloud services, so we work with a team that is doing enterprise cloud services. If we need some legal advice, so we go with our city attorneys specialized on IT, for instance. Social, with our Office of Equity and Human Rights. If we are developing tools and processes, so management, monitoring, building registries, so be transparent and all that. So this is a long scope of work, of course, but this is a long range of our planning. And then reach out to the right experts too. Experts in the community, like this panel here, they are like our first kind of way in which we can actually get help, but look into our partners. So for instance, we work with, we have a group with West Coast cities, so Seattle, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Long Beach, and San Diego, they are part of that group, and we share issues around privacy and AI, for instance, and we meet regularly. And then work with your jurisdiction. So in our case, we need to work with Metro in Portland, with our counties also, and we are doing a lot of work on that, around data sharing, making sure that standards around data and data quality, data standards are actually, we use it across. So anyways, it's a long run, but I hope this has been helpful, and I'm happy to chat with you after.
Hi there. My name is Quang Trong. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Urban Form. I sometimes say that my name rhymes with King Kong, so that's easy to remember. But I'm the founder of a company that uses AI on top of GIS technology to provide clarity and confidence around zoning information. So we've been developing our AI technology for several years, so I have a very strong perspective on AI. I'm coming from the private sector. We work in the technology startup world. So I'm going to give you a very narrow and focused idea of how I believe AI can help governments. AI is essentially all around us, right? And I think it's a little bit more pervasive than people realize. If you use your phone, if you use your computer, then you're essentially interacting with AI on a daily basis already. Well, that's me. Okay. I'm coming at you because I have a perspective of working in the private industry for a while, not just from technology, but also as an architect who was working with governments on a day-to-day basis to build buildings. And that is the perspective that I'm also presenting to you here today. I think a lot of us are interested right now because of the hype around generative AI. And that is a little bit different than the way that we previously conceived of the way we use Google or Facebook or Google Maps or any of these other technological applications for which AI is already present. But I believe, in my perspective right now, we feel generative AI is a little bit like cryptocurrency was a few years ago. Do you guys remember that, cryptocurrency? The technology was exciting to some, but the applications were a little bit questionable, right? What would we use it for? This is where I feel like we are with generative AI right now. So what I would like to talk to you about is how AI can help. And I'll go over the differences in the categorizations of AI that came to me from a professor that I had in graduate school, and I hope that helps illuminate it. I'll talk about it at the end a little bit before I talk about how AI can help. So at a fundamental level, this is what I believe AI can do. It can help you get information faster. Now, when you use Control F on an Adobe PDF document, you're essentially already using AI because it is scanning the characters, it is recognizing the characters, and it is letting you, at a really basic level, find words faster. Now, it can do this a lot faster than you can, right? As you realize on a 1,000-page document, if you're getting a PDF document, say the zoning code, being able to find words quickly is a really big help. And we can't underestimate how helpful that really basic level of AI is. McKinsey actually did a study about just looking how much time people spend scrolling on their computers. And I jump to this slide faster, but I usually ask people, well, how much time do you think professionals actually spend scrolling per day? And it's a significant chunk of time, right? It's more than a day a week. When you quantify the value of that for our governments, for our companies, for our businesses, for our citizens, that is enormous, of course. Now, from my perspective, what kind of information can we start to apply that can be a benefit? From my perspective as an architect, as a professional architect, the kind of information that I saw had a huge impact on the way our cities functioned, on the way our buildings were developed, on the kind of environment that we lived in, was the building and construction information, also known as zoning. This is a huge way that we can use the ability of AI to help expedite the processes of finding information. Now, the question, of course, is who needs this information, right? And there's this complicated web in development and construction information where, because of the inaccessibility and difficulty in finding this information, you have this strange kind of web of professionals who are always kind of arguing over who should be responsible for finding it, sourcing it, interpreting it, gathering it, documenting it, putting it in front of the government to kind of figure it out, right? So these are developers, architects, that was me, civil engineers, land use attorneys. The owners are trying to figure out it because that's directly related to the value of their land. Brokers trying to assist. And you can kind of, point to this complicated web and talk about how, those are the constituents that, would be the most, for whom it would be most useful. But in reality, it is actually everybody who needs this information, not just the building professionals, right? There are studies done by, this was a study done by the National Association of Home Builders in conjunction with the National Multifamily Housing Council, who found that up to 42% of the cost of a single unit of housing is attributed to just managing the regulations that they have to deal with. So that translates to a direct cost, as we all know with housing affordability, that impacts everybody. So the basic functioning of government and the basic functioning of our ability to understand, document, and communicate this information has a significant impact on everybody. Now, why do we need AI? Now, I think we talked about it a little bit. AI does all sorts of things that we kind of, interact with on a way that we perhaps are less conscious of. I think when people talk about generative AI or general AI, they think of the robots and they think of the cyborgs and the characterizations in popular media, but you're actually using AI when you use Google, right? You're using AI when you do all sorts of things on your phone and on your computers daily. So the reason why this is helpful is because right now that kind of technology has not touched so many spheres of government. And this is a photo I took when I was a professional practicing architect of the booth that you would go to at the building department to get information, right? This is the technology that we are currently using. This is what could be augmented by AI. Because we're doing this at many different levels, and there's many ways to kind of improve these processes. There is not only the technological aspect of certain amounts of data that have not been touched by AI, but the fact that the data itself that we have to deal with is so complicated, right? In the 3 metropolitan counties of Portland Metro, we have over 1,000 different zoning designations, right? Thousands of different pages that people have to navigate in order to figure out what they can do with land. You dive into it a little bit more and you realize that the zoning code also depends on maps. And maps that were generated decades ago in some cases, and they look like this. And they require our eyes at this moment to read them, right? This is something that AI can help us with, because who wants to look at maps like that? I don't know. I did not. I have this funny thing I said. It was like doing the zoning was my least favorite part about being an architect, and somehow I turned that into my full-time job. But it's also like this, right? When you dive, this is Title 33 from Portland, which is City of Portland zoning code. It is not only text, it is maps, it is diagrams, it is charts, it is tables. It is all of this that our eyes do right now, and that we do manually and laboriously. And I would also say error-prone, in an error-prone way, that AI can help us with. This is an example of text. Who likes reading this kind of text all day? Does anybody? Yeah. Control F is very helpful, right? Sometimes when I talk about the complexity of zoning, I often bring up this image. This is, people talk about, sometimes when I talk to people who don't know about the complexity of zoning, they say, well, don't you just go to Portland Maps and look it up and you're done? That is not the case. And the case of regulating space is so difficult that this is an example of how one municipality regulates one parking space. This is in Culver City. So you can see how complicated the regulation of space can be. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I pull up to a sign like this, I just drive away. I don't even try to read it, right? Do you guys try and figure it out? Do you guys try and read it? I mean, if it's the only space, you sit there for a while, right? Or you just gamble. But do you figure it out? I can't figure it out. I'm gonna level with you. I have 2 Ivy League degrees. I cannot figure that out. But you know what could figure it out? A digital clock, not even AI. It's just a digital clock. Just put a clock at the bottom of that sign, and it can tell you right away, yes, you're allowed to park here, or no, right? Just something as simple as that. And this is where we have to think about AI a little bit. There are very different kinds of levels of AI. The generative AI right now is getting all the hype, but at a fundamental level, just the basic algorithms of figuring out what time is that allowed with a yes or no, layering on different kinds of things, what we call algorithmic AI, that can be a big help. That can be a really, really big help. So this is where I'll talk about this book by my former professor, Phil Bernstein, who wrote this book called Machine Learning. It was published just a couple months before ChatGPT came out. So he had the unfortunate circumstance of defining these 3 kinds of AI. The middle one he called empirical. But he means the same thing as what we now call generative, so I just kind of swapped that. But he brings up these 3 kinds of different AI. Now, there's the general AI, which is, I think, what everybody's freaked out about, the Terminator or, the Blade Runner replicants. That's what everybody thinks of a little bit. But just below that is kind of where we are now, where we have these, what he calls large data sets that can be used to define or generate insights and empirical results. That's a little bit what LLMs are, and things like ChatGPT, which for you guys, just for your edification, generative pre-trained transformer, which is trained on data that was found in the internet, based on LLMs, which is a large language model, which is essentially a really giant spreadsheet about word probability associations. So if you think about that fundamental level of what an LLM is, it is basically, I have a PhD who's a PhD friend who did his doctorate on LLMs. He calls it spicy autocomplete. When you're typing in your Gmail and it autocompletes your sentence, that's basically the root of what it's doing. He calls it spicy autocomplete. And then below that, we have algorithmic AI. And algorithmic AI, we first started to kind of interact with on a very fundamental level when Google came out. Right, this is 1997, 1998, I can't remember actually, when Google developed an algorithm that would basically allow you to kind of better understand relevant search results. And that was an algorithm. It was something that could be tweaked. We can understand it. We can make adjustments to it. It wasn't a black box like the generative AI is, because there's a difference between AI that is deterministic, that can give you results that are logical and that you can understand the points for, and generative AI, which is probabilistic. And that is a key important difference in my opinion. There are times and processes for which a deterministic result can help, and there are times and processes for which probabilistic results can help, and we have to be conscious of which and where those apply. So, from my opinion, and this is a very narrow application from my perspective of how AI can help, it can help us get information faster with fewer errors, and that has already significant applicability and utility in the way that we work. The difference can be seen as something like this, right? From the way we used to carry and manage records to the way we do it now. It is something like what we do when I drive carpool for my daughter's school. I put on Google Maps. It's not because I don't know how to get there, but it can help me avoid traffic. It can help me just figure out. So it can augment the way that we used to do things. For urban form, what we did is we use AI to help you read the maps and help you read the code faster. And that's where the AI comes in, and it's a very narrow application, and I believe that has significant utility. And that's the difference between going to a booth and flipping through thousands of pages of binders or being able to access it on your phone. Our mission is technology for better buildings, cities, and environments, and we believe that AI can help in that regard. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate all of your slides here today. We have some time, and I do have some pre-generated questions, but before I even get to mine, I really want to open it up to all of you. So I will be walking around with a mic, and they will be answering questions here.
Hi, I'm Jessica Engelke. I'm the mayor of North Bend, Oregon. We're about 10,000 people down on the coast. And my day job is I teach at our community college. And so I'm really interested what the professors think about AI and what we should be doing as teachers to help the next generation. Because there's clearly like two components here, how we're going to be using it now, but then also what do we do in education and how do we get people ready for the next steps in their career with AI?
I can take a shot. So I've been trying to figure out like the best ways of incorporating AI into my teaching too. One of the things that I'm doing right now is kind of still telling the students how important all of these critical skills are, because some of those could kind of lose. So I've been having more like assignments in class that are testing them, and so they can't use ChatGPT. But I'm also kind of not putting some kind of responsibility, like you can't use ChatGPT right now, because you need to still teach them those critical skills. But ChatGPT is going to become one of the more tools for everybody is using. So you also need to teach them how to kind of like, use some of these tools or something like that. So for now, like I'm trying to put more assignments in class to push them towards those critical thinking, because that's what school is about, as far as I'm understanding, right? I can teach them certain skills, but the critical skills is the most critical part. So that's one thing I've been kind of doing in some of those things.
I would say most schools are struggling with this, and most teachers are struggling with this. This is our audience's city, but same issues. I'm going to share my opinion on this. The schools I teach at are trying to develop policy guidelines. The ones I mentioned we're developing, but I'll share with you where my position is on this, and we might have agreement. Students are going to need to become digitally literate and proficient in operating narrow AI types, generative AI, and other types, because they won't be competitive otherwise. Anecdotally, this is for cities and for academic, I was on a team writing a grant proposal a few weeks ago. We used chatbot, particularly ChatGPT-4, to form the proposal, to improve the proposal, to make sure the proposal matched the criteria of the request for the proposal. ChatGPT also analyzed the success probability of getting the proposal. We competed with 80 other organizations and we won. I think we had good concepts, but using this generative software polished and refined our proposal to the point where it had a 95% collaboration to the criteria for the proposal. For students, just as an example, so for students to be successful, I really feel sorry for classes where they say that's not the way we've done it for the last 30 years, or we prohibited using it, or this is crazy talk. Anyway, my opinion.
To weigh in. Yeah, very quickly. Something that I think important that is missing in this conversation is with the students particularly emphasize the responsibility of technology. with great power comes great responsibility, right? So particularly when uses of generative AI for the nudes, for instance, for girls, where is the accountability? How to use ethical AI, for instance, how to use technology in a way that it doesn't create harm, and understand that. So it's very easy for everybody, really, to jump into the cool features of technology, but there is also this other responsibility of using ethically technology in a way that creates the benefit that we need.
So, first of all, I wanted to thank all of the presenters for excellent presentations. Thank you very much. My question is about the AI data security. I have been using ChatGPT quite extensively. However, I'm still very weary about the data that I feed into the model because I do not fully understand how it may be used. In Eugene, we do not have an AI policy yet. We're a little bit behind the city of Portland on that. And I have heard, some of our coworkers are saying, well, if it's a public record under Oregon public records laws, it's okay to feed it into ChatGPT because anybody can request that information anyway. And I have a sense that it may be a little bit more complex than that. So I know it's a very complex subject. I would love to hear from Hector as a fellow city employee. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, the main thing is that there is a lot of black boxes. So the private sector does not work as the government, right? As government, we have all the sunshine laws around us, public records. Cybersecurity is definitely a big thing. We don't want our systems to be suddenly have hacks there or having to pay ransomware. So training employees how to use these technologies is a key component. Using it for understanding the risk of the use is also another key component. And, start practically also, like create one-sheets, explainers of the technology, and you are not alone. So Eugene, we are sister cities in general, so we can collaborate on that, definitely.
Rob Corbett, I'm a city manager in Pendleton, Oregon. One of the most perplexing problems that we're dealing with in our community is homelessness, mental health, and addiction. I have been gathering an inventory of the resources in our community that are available to assist people with mental health and addiction. Trying to unravel how it is all supposed to work, how it interacts, how it crosses over, the inefficiencies of how the system works and doesn't work. It occurs to me that AI has the potential to look at those systems and come up with a better way for us to be able to provide those services in our community in a more efficient way. So do any of you could any of you direct me toward a solution that I could go to AI and help begin to sort this out for the people in my community?
Well, obviously Portland is at the top of the list in Oregon in terms of the number of this crisis, the public health crisis, and we get that question. So our strategy in Portland has been focusing on data quality. So not so much on the solutions, because we get vendors all the time telling us that this app is going to resolve public health, public safety, housing crisis, and everything, right? However, all these systems are being trained with real data. Real data comes from history, right? If we are feeding these systems, with bad quality data, with biased data, the output is going to be bad quality of bias. Garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's a principle in these cases. Put the human in the middle for human problems, definitely, right? So all this, the public health crisis is definitely very complex. AI can be a tool. I believe it can be a tool to resolve all these issues, but make sure that the tool is used responsibly, and make sure that we are doing the due diligence to make the tool and the results accountable. And we actually put the right resources around that, because the talent around the people who use that is as important as the tool itself.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I know they're going to be hanging around. So if you have additional questions, please come up and see them. I'm sure they'd be happy to provide you their contact information. Thank you all again for joining us today. I really appreciate the content you brought forward. And just as a reminder, we have applications for policy committees open right now. The Broadband, Telecom, and Cybersecurity will be discussing AI policy potentially at the state level. If that's an interest, please sign up. Also, please take a moment to provide us with your feedback on today's session. You can do this by clicking on the session in the conference app and then clicking on the feedback button. If you don't see the feedback button, add the session to your conference agenda. Up next on today's conference program is lunch in the trade show. The Women's Caucus business meeting begins at 12:15 in the block room. If you are attending a tour, enjoy lunch in the trade show area, then head out toward the west side of the Hilton between the hotel and the Holt Center, where the staff will check you in. Tour buses will start loading at 12:45 p.m. and depart at 1 p.m. Thank you for joining us this morning, and enjoy the rest of the day here at the 98th LOC Annual Conference. Thank you.